Welcome to ZOOdigital's Capital Markets Event 2020. I should warn you that this is a fully live event, so I guess anything could happen in this day and age. Let me say, first of all, that you will be hearing shortly from speakers in sessions that will last roughly an hour and 40 minutes, and then we've allowed 20 minutes at the end for Q&A. The way that we'll deal with questions is you should see on the right side of your screen a tab with labeled questions. And at any point, you can go in there, type in a question, and when we get to the end, we'll take those questions in turn and try and get through as many as we can in the time available. Okay, let's get started. I'm Stuart Green. I'm CEO of ZOOdigital and a co-founder of the business. And my job here is really just to provide an introduction, particularly for those who are new to the Zoo story, and also to set the scene for what's to come in the presentations that follow. ZOOdigital is a company that provides localization and digital packaging services into the entertainment industry. And our clients include the biggest names in global media entertainment, primarily in the US and UK. We're a company headquartered in the UK, and we also have a major facility in Los Angeles where we employ currently just over 250 people, of which about 30 are dedicated to R&D roles, and they're responsible for developing our proprietary technology. We provide services in over 80 languages, and we work with a very large network of freelance creative individuals, over 7,000 of them to date. What sets us apart as a provider of these kinds of services is the proprietary and unique technology that we've created. These are cloud-based systems, all designed around providing efficiencies for the processes of media localization and digital packaging. Our mission is to provide services for fast and cost-effective localization of media and digital packaging through the power of these technologies that we've created. And our vision for the company is to be one of the biggest, if not the biggest, provider of these kinds of services in our industry over the course of the next few years. Our work begins when our clients provide to us usually completed programs, and they are usually TV programs, TV series, or feature films. And our job is to take those original materials and do everything that's necessary so that they can be prepared and made available for distribution through streaming platforms in many different languages. And that entails a whole range of different services, including localization, which is subtitling and dubbing, as well as a whole range of different services that we collect together and refer to as digital packaging that relate to dealing with the actual raw materials, getting the video and audio and other materials in the right technical formats. And when we've completed that work, we deliver the completed, localized and packaged products into these delivery platforms. We're an end-to-end vendor. What that means is that we can provide all of these service lines that are needed to undertake this work. And we're one of very few end-to-end vendors in our industry, and indeed one that's very clearly differentiated by virtue of the proprietary technology that we have. I should say that the programs that we receive in some cases are brand new programs, new original materials that have never been aired, and sometimes they are catalog titles. The kind of services that I've mentioned are applicable in both cases, but the kind of services that are needed most vary according to the nature of the original title. So in particular, new productions, most of the work that we'll do will be to do with subtitling and dubbing, whereas for catalog titles, much more of the work relates to digital packaging. We report against 3 different segments, so I'll just refer to those so you can relate them in turn to the services that I just mentioned. Our largest segment is localization, which includes subtitling and dubbing. Our second largest is digital packaging, which, as I mentioned, covers all these technical functions to get materials in the right formats. And we also report a segment that we refer to as software solutions, which is primarily recurring revenue related to legacy software that we've developed over the course of the last 10 to 20 years. What I hope that we'll achieve in this event, if we're successful, is to give you a much greater breadth and depth in your understanding of Zoo and our business. And we'll begin with talk about the market and help you understand how streaming video on demand has been changing and is growing, and the demand that is creating for media localization and the services that we provide. We'll talk to you about the end-to-end service model, a model that is fundamental to our competitive advantage and that enables us to support global over-the-top OTT distribution of entertainment content. We'd be remiss if we didn't talk about COVID-19, so we're going to tell you how that is affecting the industry, and in particular, how the impact it is having on Zoo and the opportunities that is created for us. We'll talk about cloud dubbing, and in particular, we'll give you a feel for how ZOOdubs, our proprietary dubbing platform, is used to create dubbed audio streams for entertainment content. We'll explain how technology enables, our technology enables new professionals to come into this industry by enabling the development of new talent and to address one of the issues this industry faces in the shortage of talent globally. We'll talk about how we can scale this up and how we can, we believe, become one of the largest, if not the largest player in our industry. And finally, we'll lift the hood a little bit on our technology and talk about our cloud platforms and why these will enable us to be very successful. To do all that, we have in total 7 speakers. 3 of them we're very pleased to have invited are independent external individuals in our industry, and 4 are my colleagues at Zoo. So without further ado, I'd like to invite onto stage our first speaker, Esther Bond. Esther, who spent her career in localization, is research director at Slator, which is a market intelligence firm which focuses on the localization industry. Esther, over to you.
Thanks, Stuart. Hi, everyone. Great to be with you this afternoon. Thank you to Stuart for the introduction, and also to you and the Zoo team for inviting me to speak on the media localization segment today. As Stuart said, I'm Esther Bond. I'm the head of research at Slator. We are a news and insights company focused specifically on the translation and localization industry. So I'll be approaching this short presentation today from the perspective of the language industry as a whole, before taking a closer look at media localization and specifically the competitive landscapes of suppliers, the impact of COVID-19 on the space, and the unique challenges and opportunities that exist within this segment. Next slide, please. I'll give you a quick overview of Slator to kick things off. We were founded about 5 years ago, and we're proud to be the most influential source of news and insights for the language industry. We're headquartered in Switzerland, and we're spread across 3 continents, including myself here in London. So our website, slator.com, houses our editorial news and analysis pieces, and we also develop proprietary research products such as the Slator Language Service Provider Index, which is a list of the top 150 or so language service providers globally by revenue, and the Language Industry Investor Map, which is an interactive database of investment transactions in the industry. Also on the research side, we compile sector reports like gaming, media, life sciences, and others, and topical reports. So we cover areas of M&A, machine translation, and others. And in addition to this, we regularly work on mandates and to provide custom research and analysis for our customers across various aspects of the industry. And we're the hosts of Language Industry Conference, SlatorCon, and we've hosted many of the CEOs from the top leading language service providers over the past few years. We also run a weekly news podcast called SlatorPod. Next slide, please. And this is the global language industry as we see it. So it's a $24 billion industry in 2019, according to our estimates. And we segmented the market into 10 end customer verticals, which you should be able to see here. And we put a market size on the total and on each vertical as well. And we take into account activities that support the conversion of content from one language into another. So broadly speaking, that means translation, interpreting, localization, as well as the technologies that underpin these services. And we wouldn't necessarily take into account access services or same language captioning for our market estimates. You can see the public sector technology there are among the largest buyers of language services worldwide, while media accounts for around 10% of buyer spend on language services globally. And we judge this spend to be roughly split 70-30 in favor of dubbing versus subtitling. Next slide. Looking at the growth of these 10 end customer segments in 2019, you can see that media was among the fastest growing segments, both in US dollar terms and also in terms of percentage growth. Technology grew from a larger base, but more slowly from 2018, whereas gaming is growing at a similar rate to media, but from a much lower base. Next slide. To understand the landscape of media localization suppliers, we do find it useful to differentiate the suppliers and segment them, broadly speaking, into 3 categories. So there are those that generate more than 25 million in revenues. And secondly, a larger group of niche pure play providers or SME media localizers. And thirdly, the LSPs or non-media specialists that also service the dubbing and subtitling needs of media entertainment customers, among other things. And taking a quick look at the group of leading players there, you'll see the long-established names of SDI Media, VSI, Deluxe. There's also IUNO, which acquired BTI Studios last year. And you have the likes of Plint, a Swedish company which was recently acquired by private equity, that currently focuses purely on subtitling, and Dubbing Brothers, which has grown through a mix of acquisition and organic growth. And of course, Zoo, which has a strong emphasis on technology provision, such as remote dubbing and end-to-end workflow management. Within the SME bracket, so that second category there, you tend to have the smaller, more regional players that are oftentimes single language specialists. Some in this group do manage to gain traction with the larger global content owners, but many more would work to service the needs of local broadcasters as well. In the third category, the non-media specialists, you have a handful of language service providers who work across a variety of customer sectors. Some have recently begun to pursue the media segment, and typically through acquisition and also strategic hires. And there's Keyword Studios, the video game specialist, which works to a lesser extent with media localization customers, and recently said that media remains an attractive segment for them at some point. Next slide, please. And turning to the impacts of COVID now, I know that the effects of the pandemic have still not fully emerged, but we can look back at what's happened in the industry over the past 6 months or so now. What we've observed is a chain reaction that happened that's ultimately boosted the profile of remote dubbing and has favoured those who are geared up to offer it. Filming locations around the world were shut down, as we know, early on in the pandemic, and content production ceased. With no new content in the works, some content owners shifted to focusing on their existing catalogue of content and began localising more of their back catalogues. Well, on the supplier side, some were sustained for a while by new content that was already in the supply chain. And some saw an uptick in back catalogue content, which did help to offset the lack of new content as time went on. But at the same time, suppliers closed physical dubbing studios around the world, and many dubbing projects that were live or about to start could not go ahead as planned. So content owners, for their part, were prompted really to explore alternatives to in-studio dubbing, such as remote dubbing, where previously they might have been unwilling or unmotivated to explore these solutions. For suppliers who had remote dubbing solutions in place, they saw a surge in interest and demand for their services, while major suppliers who had previously relied on physical dubbing studios, many put in place their own remote dubbing solutions in order to fulfill the immediate demand from content owners. And then looking to Q3, we have seen production start up in a very limited way, really, in Hollywood and elsewhere, while dubbing studios have mainly reopened in parts of the world under slightly different circumstances and constraints linked to COVID. And many suppliers are still waiting for pipelines to refill to pre-COVID levels, which could take several months or longer. Next slide. I'd also like to share some reports from some of the leading suppliers about the impact of COVID-19 on their businesses so far. SDI Media spoke to us recently about their Q2, although they haven't actually released full results for the quarter yet. They said that overall, they do expect Q2 to see a significant impact from COVID-19. And while Q3 is faring way better, they're still estimating between a 10 and 15% drop in localization revenues for the year to December. VSI, so there hasn't been any financial information particularly coming out of VSI, but they did tell us that they put in place a remote dubbing solution in response to studio closures. They also made a point in their marketing material of saying that remote dubbing really was a case of ensuring business continuity, and that in their estimation, home recording is no match for a professional recording setting in terms of quality. Looking at TransPerfect, so the large multi-sector language service provider, they told us that demand held firm for the media segment, or their media division, in Q2. And they also mentioned that some customers had replaced dubbing with subtitling as a result of the studio closures to ensure continuity. And they said that they expect remote dubbing to outlast the length of the pandemic, and it's not just a stopgap. Really, they confirmed what Zoo has said, that customers are more open to remote recording scenarios now, and they also launched a remote solution, iDub, in response to the crisis. Straker, another translation company, an LSP, they have released Q1 and Q2 results since the pandemic hit. Straker said that the media segment saw smaller revenue declines than other areas of their business in Q1, and that it actually grew in Q2. Zoo Digital saw a temporary softening in sales early on in the pandemic, but overall they've observed a big uplift in demand for remote dubbing throughout the pandemic, which I'm sure we'll hear more about today. Zoo is expecting double-digit revenue growth for the 6 months to September 2020. Next slide, please. So I'll conclude the presentation really with just a couple of slides on the challenges and opportunities for the media segment. I'll spend a little bit of time talking about this. For content producers, it's true to say that new content production remains extremely challenging and painfully slow under COVID-19. It would be far too soon to say that things are fully back on the road to returning to normal from a production standpoint. And then a very different challenge, but I think one that's real nonetheless. Although the fragmentation of the market on the content owner side is a driver of demand for localization, if we take this to the extreme, fragmentation could actually trigger audiences to resist the need to subscribe to more platforms, or an aggregator could emerge to disrupt the market. Now, on the supplier side, there are a different set of challenges, as you would imagine, and they're impacting on suppliers in different ways and to varying degrees. One long-standing challenge for the industry is that of the availability of qualified talent, or talent shortage. And the shortage is more pronounced in dubbing, particularly because of the need to place work or find very specific voice talent, voice actors, and because of the emphasis on artistry and also quality. Now, another challenge that the traditional dubbing providers are facing is really to do with their reliance on physical assets in the form of dubbing studios. Some would own, tens of physical dubbing studios around the world, making their operating costs comparatively high to those that don't. Customer expectations also can be quite challenging for suppliers, and in particular for those that seek to service the full breadth of customers within this segment. The expectations and realities, for example, of streaming providers are very different from those of a broadcaster or from those of a major Hollywood studio. And working for every possible profile of media customer may not, in fact, prove to be the best strategy for media localizers. Differentiation. So it's an increasing challenge we're seeing for some suppliers. Media localizers really need to communicate their messaging around their offering effectively to the markets and to potential customers. Media localizers can struggle sometimes to find ways to differentiate themselves from the competition. And particularly as technology improves, more suppliers are offering remote solutions, which in part, as we know, has been driven by COVID. The growth of the media localization segment as a whole has attracted new entrants to the space over the past few years. And this creates increased competition for the large incumbents in an industry that was traditionally fairly consolidated at the top. Next slide, please. Although the full impact of COVID does remain to be seen, as I said, overall media both was and is a growth segment, and one that is attractive for suppliers, as we've seen, and for investors. The primary demand, or primary driver of demand for media localization, and really where the main opportunity lies, is within the growth of streaming services. Now, if you think about the platform first, big tech companies like Netflix, Amazon, Google, etc., these were often the first to market for OTT platforms. Hollywood studios are also following suit, and they're launching their own direct-to-consumer offerings, with the likes of Disney Plus and HBO Max, and many more coming to market. Against this backdrop, content budgets are increasing as these streaming platforms are competing to outdo each other in terms of the original productions, in order to attract subscribers. Netflix, for one, they've openly credited their growth, or at least growth in their subscriber base, at least in part, to localization. For media localizers, this is good news. It means, well, the trend is good news. It means more clients, more content, more languages, so long as the streaming services last. Sticking with Netflix, to illustrate one other point, is that content owners don't actually want to have to manage localization, and this is good news for media localizers. Netflix piloted at one point a couple of years ago a program called Hermes that was designed to recruit, train, test, onboard, and really manage linguists at scale. They eventually closed the program about a year later, I think, saying that these tasks, well, they felt that these tasks actually were best left to suppliers. So just a couple more opportunities here. Day and date, it's an opportunity for some, but also a challenge for others, really. So this refers to the idea that all content or multiple episodes of a series are going to be released to audiences around the world at the same time. It's very different from bringing out a film in English for English-speaking audiences and then releasing it in France a few weeks later. Not all suppliers can keep pace with this way of working, and that creates an opportunity for those who can. And lastly, the effects of COVID-19 itself present an opportunity for suppliers who manage to ride out the storm, not only when we're thinking about remote dubbing and remote ways of working, but in particular, many smaller companies and smaller competitors may be weakened by the effects of the crisis. So thank you very much for listening. I look forward to hearing the rest of the presentations from today's other speakers. So I'll hand back to Stuart.
Thank you very much, Esther. That was a really comprehensive and thorough overview of the market. Our next speaker is Doran, my board colleague. So our Chief Commercial Officer and President of our US operation. Gordon's been pivotal in establishing relationships with all major US media and entertainment companies. He's held senior positions in sales and marketing for software companies in the software industry since the early 90s, both in the UK and the US. Over to you, Gordon.
Thank you very much, Stuart. Hello, everybody. I was going to say good morning, but I think for most of you it's good afternoon, but definitely morning for me. As I said, I'm Gordon, and we'll get started on a bit of background. You know, I'm going to echo some of the stuff Esther just said there. You know, this is our view of the world sitting at the zoo side. And, you know, just a bit of background on, you know, what we would say is the state of the market for our customers. And that's one of the biggest things here. What happened to our customers, you know, during COVID and the continuing impact from COVID. And as we've heard, you know, the new productions just ground to a halt. The current went down on them. It stopped basically, and you know, no new content to release at that point. And that is still, to more or less a degree, still the same. We're still seeing a lull in the new content coming through. Productions are starting to open back up slowly. In fact, just this week, the unions in the US here agreed, you know, safety protocols to allow productions to begin safely, you know, up and running again. So we expect that come probably January, February, or first quarter next year, that we'll actually start to see some of that come through. One of the things they focused on, because they don't have new content to come through and release, is going into the back catalogue. You know, some of our customers, people like Disney Plus, that are launching their platform across many areas, they are now really focused on filling that platform with that catalogue content. If you're a consumer, you go there, you expect to see a lot of stuff. So getting it up there and getting it localized on the platform is a really important area for them. And one of the things we're hearing, is that this is going to have a lasting impact on these customers, some, $160 billion over 5 years. And you can see that it is getting back slowly, but it was a major impact at the start. Next slide, Johnny. So that's kind of what happened to our customers. What did we see sort of happen to the market and our competitors? And again, as Esther said, effectively, most of the people that we compete with own dubbing studios around the world, and those studios effectively just shut down. And what we saw very quickly, that was not a lot of resilience in the supply chain. Basically, it just stopped at that point. And a lot of people, our phones started ringing quite a bit at that point, because for us, we've always been recording in the cloud, so we were able to keep that supply chain moving. So I think it was a bit of a wake-up call, certainly for these dubbing studios and for their customers. Their customers suddenly realized as well, actually, this thing just ground to a halt. So ongoing, they're starting to open back up, but their throughput is severely affected. Basically, there's a lot of sanitizing requirements between actors coming in and out of the studio, social distancing requirements. And as part of that, they've also then started to look at remote dubbing as well, or remote recording, as a lot of people call it. We're seeing ongoing things with the actors actually unwilling and quite often to even travel to the studios. So even though the studio is open and they can actually go record there, many actors just don't want to travel there. A lot of these studios are in the center of major cities, and getting the travel in there is just something a lot of the actors don't want to do. So they not only have the impact with the not being able to put as much work through the studio, but actually less actors willing to go in there and travel. So that's kind of what they're seeing at the moment. For us, it was a little bit different. Next slide, please. Oh, there we go. So for us, it was actually a bit more business as usual. We never really blinked an eye as the whole thing happened, because everything we operates in the cloud, so we can have a dispersed workforce. That's not a problem to us. The biggest challenge for us was just physically moving our staff out of our offices and getting them working from home, getting them set up with laptops, making sure the right security is in place to access the content. So for us, we were able to move there very, very quickly. And another big part, and we don't talk about it that much as an outward facing to investors, but we talk about it a lot to our customers, is that we operate this end-to-end service model that Stuart mentioned earlier. And that was really, really important, because it allows us to pivot across the entire range of services that may be required by our customers. And as we mentioned before, as our customers moved away from new content appearing, they went and focused their energies on the back catalog content and getting it up in their platform. So just to talk about that a little bit, if we go to the next slide, please. So what are all those services? And the best way to imagine them is, if you log into Netflix or Disney Plus and you're traversing through the platform, all of that stuff you're seeing on there is all part of those end-to-end services. It's basically, if somebody hands you a piece of video and you take that piece of video and create everything that's required, whether that be subtitles or dubs in all the various languages, but also pieces of artwork. The artwork needs to get localized. The cast and crew, the synopsis, all of these things have to be created, have to be localized, and then what we call packaged, which means they get packaged up together and delivered on to the platform. But on top of that, there's also a lot of technical jobs as well. There's the audio mixing, the transcoding in the video, so taking the video from one format to another, just QC the video, dub cards, which may sound bizarre, but very important to get it right from a legal point of view, which basically gives information at the end. If you ever watched the end of a movie, when the credits are running, it tells you who actually dubbed it in the various languages. All those things need to be created, need to be checked for legal, then need to be added onto the piece of video as well. So basically, that's one of the things that we focused on heavily, is having that complete end-to-end model. As part of that as well, our focus always has been on cloud dubbing. And I think the really important thing here is that we refer to our cloud dubbing as a platform rather than remote recording. So for a lot of the things that people moved to when COVID kicked in, it was really just the ability to have someone somewhere else record remotely effectively. But what we actually have is an entire platform built end to end to support that dubbing process. That can be from the translation of the languages, what we call the adaptation of the language, and I believe one of our speakers will dig into that a little bit more later, but really, really important part of the process. So adaptation is included in it. The assignment of rights, which is the legal contract the talent have to sign once they finish recording. The actual recording itself, obviously. The casting, so actually being able to look at all the various talent we have in place and make sure we cast appropriate for it. And also what they call voice test kits. So where they'll actually record their voice against one of the characters, and the content owners will approve that that's the voice we're going to use. So what we actually have is this complete end-to-end service solution, all built in the cloud. So everything can be handled in that one platform. We go to that next slide, please. And one of the goals we had here was, when we developed that, was really just kind of reimagine how you could dub content. Today and traditionally for many people still, that's done physically in a studio, in location. And usually the actors are restricted that they'll use to traveling distance from that studio. So we can imagine a world where you could bring the best together from anywhere in the world. They didn't have to be local to each other, but actually bringing the best talent around the world together onto a platform and allow them to dub and record that content. So that was one of our main goals here. And as a secondary one, allow people to be able to dub wherever you're in an appropriate location to record. So that could be in a traditional studio, but also a vast number of voice actors have their own home recording set up. In fact, after COVID-19, that's now accelerating even more rapidly, that people are setting up their own home recording environments. And we have some technology, and you'll see it in a little video, to be able to assess the recording environment they're in and make sure where they are is good enough to record. So what it meant here twofold was connecting people around the world so they could record and work on content together, but also give us the ability to let them record anywhere that was good enough to actually record that content. So it was a unique combination, and very different from what anybody's seen before, but it was a unique combination of things that we were doing when we decided to launch a dubbing service and build it on the back of the cloud. Next slide, please. So, that's what we set out to do. We went down that road. We saw that as the way forward, sort of reimagining how people would dub using the technology that's available today. And, there was definitely some impact in us bringing that to the market and the way some people felt about it. And we saw the two biggest things were technical and creative, were the two main areas people kind of pushed back a little bit. Technical was really just, I think people didn't believe that what we were showing them was possible, that you could record and operate this way. And for us, COVID-19 was sort of a line in the sand on that front. So at that point, people had no choice. If they wanted to get mostly jobs finished that had perhaps been started, or content that was finished and they needed to get dubbed to get out the door, the only way to do that was to record remotely. And so during that period, a lot of people came knocking on our doors. We helped out a bunch of people. And I think as part of that, a lot of that testing that people sort of were interested in doing, but never got around to because they're dealing with the normal day-to-day stuff, effectively that became the test. And for a lot of these big studios, and ones that we knew were really quite skeptical of the approach, we started working with them and producing some content for them. And actually, I think we've proven to them, based on the results of what we recorded for them, that this is a valid approach and it is a really valid way of working. And as we say, other competitors of ours now are now talking about remote dubbing as a thing, and so it's gained a lot of traction from that perspective. So I think that technical hurdle for most people we've got over it. Obviously some people will still remain skeptical because it is so different, but for a lot of these big studios, we've kind of got them over the line on, yeah, this is a valid way forward. And I think the second part for us is on the creative side. I think very much we're seen as a technology company which have entered this creative space, and dubbing very much is a creative space. I mean, we hire voice actors. These are true actors that do this job. And, creative directors. These are directors that are directing, these dub sessions to make sure they match exactly what they were intended in the original language. So there's a creative community there that we need to engage with. And that was one of the areas we've seen where there were some challenges in getting our customers comfortable to make sure that we've actually got that creative chops to go ahead and do a good job in their content Next slide. So off the back of that, you know, like I say, we think that technical challenge, we've kind of got over it. And now it's really looking at that creative challenge that we have. And one of the things we've done, you'll hear in a few minutes from Raúl, Aldana, our VP dubbing. Raúl, very well-known dubbing artist, especially in the Latin American market. So when we started to look to roll out ZOOdubs and our service plan, we decided to focus on the Latin American market first because Raúl is very well connected there. And there he took a top-down approach. So the idea was, let's connect with the best directors, the best voice talent, and get them using the system and embracing the system. And from there, it'll trickle down to these next layers of dubbing directors and dubbing talent that's out there. And that's exactly what he did. You know, we started with a handful of directors and a handful of actors there. And today, when we get jobs through for the Latin American market, most likely we will not involve a studio. We have a large group there that have their own home recording set up. The directors are all working from home, both in Latin America and other places in the world as well. They come together on the platform and they record product for us. And that's product that we've delivered to you know, some of these very big studios today. And, you know, they've been delighted with the work that we've done. So we look at that, what we did there, and say, okay, that's our plan going forward, and that's how we're going to operate. So that's what we're in the middle of doing at the moment. And the way we're rolling now is we're looking at the key target markets for our customers. So we look at, you know, people like Disney, for example, and Disney Plus, and we can see where they're rolling out that platform in terms of languages. And we'll then start to make sure that we've got support in those areas. We're going to continue to expand the Zoo internal dubbing team with people, known people in the industry. And we've seen that that's been really, really important, is that having, you know, known names that a studio can go, yep, I know that person, they know what they're doing, I feel like they're in good hands, has been an important thing that we've really, really focused on. Most recently, we just hired, you know, a head of sound who I think has 3 Emmys or something like that. And again, when he's introduced to customers, they get instant, you know, confidence that we can produce the goods from the mixing side. One of the things we're planning is growing a network of in-territory people as well. You know, it's very important that we get actually connected in the territory. Our competitors have that because they've got physical locations in the territory. Obviously, we don't want to go down that road. We don't feel that's the right road to go. But having actual people as representatives in these key territories, we feel is a really important way forward. So we're starting to look to build relationships with these people as almost sort of dubbing figureheads for us in these various territories, and making sure that we can build relationships there. And also, as we mentioned in this, make sure that we connect with the unions there as well. For us, we haven't had a problem with the unions, but we're a strange beast for the unions. Normally, you know, if you're dubbing, again, in a territory, you'll have a physical location in there, and there's rules around how that works from a union point of view. Dubbing in the cloud is a bit different, where you know, we're connecting directly with actors. They don't come to a physical location. So again, we're this curious new beast, and again, we want to make sure we connect with them and they understand who we are and what we're doing. And you know, for us, it's all about bringing more work to their union members, to the actors, you know, through our platform. As part of that area of growing that in territory dubbing expertise is also really focusing on increasing the scale of that talent pool. And one of the things we've seen is it's very, very important to get the quality. So we're going to take that same approach we did in Latin America, have these in-territory advocates, figureheads, connect us with the best talent there, and then build that best talent out. Because we've seen that as long as we've got the best people driving the bus, we do a really good job. If we have actors that aren't as good as, you know, we think they should be, we don't create a great product. So it's really important that we focus on quality first and then scale off the back of that. And then I think, you know, we may have mentioned before that we have relationships with a lot of dubbing studios around the world anyway. We've always had that hybrid model where we can record in any environment, as we say. So we call them Zoo-enabled dubbing studios. These are studios that we've trained on the platform and, you know how to record on it. So we're going to continue to grow out that as well. So it's a two-phased approach: direct relationships with voice talent directors around the world, and a direct relationship with Zoo-enabled dubbing studios around the world, so we can kind of get the best of both worlds with that hybrid model. That's pretty much it from me. At this point, we normally give you a little demo, but not the easiest under this current environment. So one of the things that we actually have trouble demoing that we thought would be good to show you guys is that collaborative approach that the directors and actors are able to take when they work on the platform. You know, if they work in a traditional studio, you'll usually have the director on one side of a physical window. The actor will be in the booth recording away, and they'll communicate backwards and forwards that way. You know, there's a new paradigm here where that little window is on the video chat screen built into ZOOdubs, and they can interact with each other just the exact same way that they would do normally in a studio. But actually, what we're hearing from a lot of our directors is that they find it even better. It's much more, they can get a much more better way working together when they're just on a platform together and they don't have a whole bunch of people watching them. So we've got a little video we're going to run now, and that'll take you through it, and hopefully you enjoy. Thank you.
I think the future of cloud dubbing is that far more studios with far more content are going to start working on a cloud-based platform because it's just so much more convenient.
ZOOdigital provides cloud dubbing services in all languages using its proprietary ZOOdubs platform.
Hello, Daniel. Hi.
Hallo Sandra, grüß dich.
A global network of highly experienced directors and voice talent work together to create dubbed audio for some of the world's most watched content. The ZOOdubs platform supports the entire dubbing workflow, streamlining the process from end to end. Voice talent and directors work together in real time from anywhere in the world. They collaborate seamlessly and securely in the platform, whether in the same studio or recording remotely on different continents.
Es ist so ein bisschen tongue-in-cheek, das Ganze.
Alles klar.
Yeah.
Whatever the recording location, ZOOdubs is designed to deliver guaranteed audio quality every time.
1, 2, 3.
The platform performs session tests prior to each recording session. This validates the environment and approves the user's recording equipment.
Polizei, hier ist der Hawk.
Scripted content such as feature films typically use lip-sync dubbing. This requires the voice actor to revoice the speech of the original on-screen performer.
Sehr gut.
To deliver a high-quality dub, the voice actor must synchronize their speech with the original content, mirroring the mouth movements and overall performance of the on-screen actor as closely as possible.
Unterwegs nach Hause.
The Rhythmaband feature in ZOOdubs supports the actor and director to achieve an authentic, synchronized performance.
Einen Apfel gekauft.
Genau. Ja, der ist am Ende am Anfang ist halt so, hallo Mama, ja, dass sich ertappt fühlt und dann im Ende hin ist ganz klein Dog gibt dabei, okay.
The dubbing director's role is to draw out the best performance from the voice actor.
Hallo Mama.
Using ZOOdubs, the director drives and controls the recording session, leaving the voice actor free to deliver the same creative performance they would in any dubbing studio setting.
Einen Apfel gekauft.
Okay, bist du glücklich damit oder willst du mir noch eine aufnehmen?
Ja, ich bin zufrieden damit. Ja, das ist schön.
In traditional dubbing, voice actors perform with paper scripts in hand. The ZOOdubs platform digitizes the script and has it centralized in the platform for the director and actor to work from.
Das der Milchreis war nicht ganz sauber. Nehmen wir noch eine auf, ja? Okay, here we go.
Each line is recorded in turn, and the platform ensures no lines are missed during the recording session.
Ich bin dann gleich da. Ja? Okay, tschüss.
From time to time, people that is not used to work remotely yet ask me, do you think the online thing is something that is going to happen in the future? And I always reply, no, it's happening now.
Using ZOOdubs, experienced voiceover artists can run sessions themselves once they have worked with the director to establish the desired tone and style. This offers an efficient and effective approach to create high-quality lecturing, audio description, or UN-style voiceover.
Tenías esa chispa en los ojos. Quedé en trance, maravillada.
In view of the pandemic, ZOOdubs was ahead of its time. And in view of the pandemic, every actor and voice actor has had remote recording facilities before the pandemic. was also ahead of their time.
I think that ZOOdigital is leading the way, and I think that's the way it's going from now on.
Cloud dubbing is the evolution of traditional dubbing services. It connects the industry's best talent with the world's most watched content and enables Zoo to deliver dubbed shows and movies to audiences everywhere. Zoo, leading the future.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Gordon, and I hope you've all found the video sequence helpful in understanding ZOOdubs and how we work. So our next speaker is our colleague from the US, Raúl Aldana. So Raúl's a veteran of the entertainment dubbing industry in Latin America. Gordon just mentioned the work that he's been doing with us. He joined Zoo in 2018, and now he leads our global dubbing services offering. So if Raúl would like to join the stage and pick up in talking about cloud dubbing from the perspective of an industry veteran.
Hello. How are you? Thanks for joining us. My name is Raúl Aldana. Thanks for inviting me to participate in this presentation. So, well, I'm going to give you a little background of how was my approach to Zoo and ZOOdubs, and I think that it's necessary to go to the beginning of my career. I started my career as a dubbing actor and director 40 years ago. I was the voice of important characters and series and theatrical releases. For a while, I was the voice of Mickey Mouse since 1988 until 1998 or 99. For 11 years, I have been the voice of Kermit the Frog for 30 years and some other characters, as you can see. A little more than 20 years, I was the head of Latin America for Disney Character Voices International and Content Localization. I was in charge of Latin American Spanish, obviously, and Brazilian Portuguese. I used to deliver with my teams in Latin America a little more than 3,000 titles per year in each language. That included theatrical releases, home video releases, pay-per-view, the Disney Channel original series and movies, all the live action series for TV, like the ABC series. I also used to produce some records and songs for the content of the Disney branded product. And also I used to be in charge of the production of many of the consumer products, like video games or the commercials and promotionals for the consumer products and marketing product, or toys, for example, that required the voice. And also I was in charge of the recording of the audio and songs for the stage productions that used to go for Latin America. In the traditional dubbing environment, of course, and as Gordon explained a lot of this, well, we have a studio and we have a staff that includes a dubbing director, an engineer, and all the administrative and production teams in the facility. The adaptation of the script is ready and ideally corrected before the recording starts. The actors receive a call and they go to the studio, they record. One by one, they complete their parts in hours and hours of work. So that requires a lot of movement and a lot of organizational efforts. And that's how dubbing has been traditionally all over the years, and it continues being done that way. And that's the way I used to do it in all the countries that I used to work, and with all the studios that I used to engage into the different projects. During my work as a creative director for Latin America, I had the great opportunity to work with big stars. And obviously that required to travel, to go to their home studios, or to go to different locations in the world to record with them, because, well, working with these big stars was a requirement from the marketing perspective, and obviously that implicated to adapt all our schedules to the recording conditions and the busy agenda of all these star talents. So for important titles, I love to onboard different stars in the same title. For example, well, Latin America has 21 countries speaking Spanish, and obviously we have in Latin America many different stars. All these stars might be located in several different locations. We can go to the next slide. So for one title, I could go to Rio de Janeiro, or I could go the next day to Caracas, or I could go to Miami. And I used to sleep on airplanes and live in hotels, travel by night, and recording by day in order to complete all my recordings. And that's a lot of effort, a lot of expenses, and a lot of movement of materials that obviously put in big in jeopardy the security of the content. And another example could be Coco from Pixar. We can move to that slide. In this project in particular, in the Latin American version of Coco, I onboarded a little more than that. It was almost 40 celebrities and stars from Mexico because of the story of the film, and they were rock stars, writers, cartoonists, all kinds of celebrities from Mexico. And all of them, they were living in Mexico City or other cities of Latin America. And this was a very complicated title to complete, because obviously everything has to be completed day and date. So after traveling for years and years throughout Latin America, I ended up living in between Mexico and Buenos Aires for a while. And then I had to travel so much that it was decided that the best way for me to handle this was to move to Miami. And from Miami, it was much easier to travel directly to every city that I needed to go. But anyway, it was not enough. So the solution that I found to supervise my recordings was to connect via one of these video conferencing platforms, which is BlueJeans. So I loved BlueJeans because it was a very stable way to connect with the studio, but it was very, very rustic, I would say, because the studio used to put the computer in front of the monitor of the video monitor, so I could see what was going on the screen, and they used to plug one cable into the computer so I could hear what was going on in the recording booth, so I could listen to the performance of the actors. I had a dubbing director in the studio, but I couldn't see the video in real time. There was a lot of latency, so I couldn't judge the accuracy of the lip sync. So that was the way I used to do it. I used to pay attention only of the performance, and I used to rely on the eyes of my team in the studio, and they would show me how the sync was later, or they would give me a screener. Then during the dialogue editorial process, I used to receive a screener of the final edited version, and I used to take my notes, and then I used to connect with the dialogue editor, and I used to address every single note that I had regarding the dialogue editorial. Everything was done remotely, but in this very limited way via BlueJeans. In my probably last months, 3-4 months of with Disney, in a meet and greet where my office was in Los Angeles, and right after Coco and the great success that Coco from Pixar had, somebody told me about a platform that could allow me to record remotely. I got really interested, especially for the issues I was facing in every project that I had to supervise. But unfortunately, the informal introduction that I received about the platform gave me totally the wrong impression about it. I completely rejected it. For me, it was really worrying that somebody was recording from home with a USB microphone, with no director involved. Of course, nobody supervising the lip sync and quality of the acoustic environment. Totally rejected. I thought that this was just a bad experiment that wouldn't work for the way I wanted to work. Unfortunately, that was my impression, because that's what I understood initially. I also had a lot of technical concerns about the quality of the transmission. I left Disney, and I was invited for an interview with Zoo. And in my first contact with Zoo, I learned more about the advantages of that dubbing platform that I immediately remembered, and that was ZOOdubs. I addressed all my worries during this interview about being able to connect in real time with the actors and the directors, and then I was explained, and they showed me exactly the way the platform works in the collaboration tool, where I was fascinated to see that the director and the actor could connect in real time, and they could see each other. And I saw this great advantage, and that there was no difference between being physically in the studio and to see each other the way we are seeing right now in this presentation. So I tried it. I love it. I tried the translation tool. I tried the collaboration tool, and I embraced it completely. Next slide, please. So I started thinking about how to scale cloud dubbing, and we needed to change the approach. We needed to change that bad impression that I had a few months before. And as Gordon just explained before, the best way for me to do it was to engage with the best. So I thought that bringing the best actors, the best directors, the best translators into our platform would give us what we needed. The best actors, the best talents, they have respect, they have credibility, and they are aspirational. They love to be part of these kind of things, and they are followed. So that was the approach. I brought my best theatrical director in Latin America. He immediately brought 2 more, and I established what I called my pyramid model. Next slide, please. The pyramid model is basically like any other multi-level business operates, we bring one, and this one brings 6 more, and we continue expanding it. So we're at the top of the pyramid with our technology. We're leading the future with our technology. So we need we needed to engage with the best of the industry, and the best way to do it, well, was again, as I said, connecting with the people I know. The best of the industry, they love technology. They love attention. They love to be the first ones. They like to brag about the new things that they are doing, and that makes a lot of noise of what we needed. And they are respected and followed by their peers and aspiring talents. So that's the way we did it. One of the things that dubbing has is that due to the locations where it's done traditionally, there are cities that are the dubbing cities of the world. So in this case, at the bottom of the pyramid, we are democratizing the business, because actors from everywhere can join the business without these restrictions of the location, or by being accepted in a studio to go and try to get an opportunity. In this case, we're making dubbing more democratic. So that worked very well. So the next step was to try to meet the requirements of the industry. Basically, the goal of a good dubbing is to do it in the best possible cost, in the best delivery date, with the best quality, and obviously we need to make sure that security is always a key factor in what we do. So that's the way we operate, and ZOOdubs brings this. But in addition to this, it's connectivity. We started doing that years ago, at least 3 years ago. We have been providing all these requirements with our platform. More than two years ago, we started doing projects in ZOOdubs with no studio intervention, in lip sync, and very high-profile titles. One of the examples is Dogville. Dogville is a Lionsgate movie with Nicole Kidman. And in this project, we had our director who lives in Merida, in the peninsula of Mexico. She lives between her house in the peninsula and her house in Mexico City. And we had 4 actors working from Buenos Aires. One actress. She's also one of our directors. She was recording from Cancun. Another actor who moved years ago from Mexico City, he moved to Austin. He was connected from Austin. Another actor in Sonora, in the northern part of Mexico. And we had one in LA, and the rest of the cast in Mexico City. So at the end, we had different countries, different cities, working exactly in the same project, with great results in terms of quality. Getting back to the Star Talent recordings, and getting back to my old days of working with big stars, I offered this idea to Netflix in a documentary series, and we designated 2 Star Talents. And one of these Star Talents, he's huge in Latin America, and he was going to be the narrator of some episodes of this documentary series. And he was touring in Latin America. So one of the episodes, he was touring in Argentina, and he was really worried, and he said, "How do I do it?" And I said, "Go to this studio." The studio was part of our studios in ZOOdubs. They received him. He connected from there, and I directed him from my office for that episode. For the next episode, he was in Paraguay, and we did the same. He connected with the studio, and I recorded him from my office. And in another episode, he was in Mexico City. He connected from there, and I brought our clients from Netflix to our conference room in the office, and they witnessed it, the way I directed him. and we completed the recordings. So Star Talent recordings were possible also to be done in our platform. And this provided, again, the key requirements of the industry. The best cost, the best delivery time, the best quality, and now security, because recording with Star Talents always required sending materials to sometimes unknown studios. And most of all, connectivity. We are providing connectivity in real time, and that's what ZOOdubs has been in my professional life. Thanks, everybody. And Stuart, thank you.
Thank you very much, Raúl. That was great. Okay, we'll move straight on now. Our next speaker is Matt Fowler. Now, due to the confidentiality agreements we have in place with most of our customers, we're rarely in a position to speak publicly about the titles we worked on. So we're delighted that Magnolia Pictures, a leading independent American film distributor, has given consent for us to discuss a recent title. And we're delighted to welcome Matt Fowler to share his experiences of the project. Matt.
Hey, thanks, Stuart. Hello, as Stuart said, my name is Matt Fowler, and I'm a union actor, writer, and director who spent the last decade working in voiceover, film, and television in Los Angeles, and now reside in Georgia. Some of my recent on-screen credits include the feature film One Night in Miami, directed by Regina King, which just played at the Toronto Film Festival and will be released in short order by Amazon Studios. Also, I was recently in the NBC show Council of Dads. And as a voice actor, I recently originated voices in a number of characters on the Netflix original animated series Legend Quest. I've also dubbed and directed more than 10,000 hours of foreign language films, television series, and animated shows and video games into English for audiences around the world for companies such as Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, and Magnolia Films, just to name a few. I'm so glad that they showed that video demo because before I get into the rest of my presentation, I'd like to talk about ZOOdubbing, the platform as an actor. Dubbing can be really challenging, even for seasoned actors, if you've never done it before. The art of timing your voice to match another actor's rhythms and doing it so authentically, it can take a long time to master. However, with ZOOdubs' bouncing ball, or as I like to call it, karaoke style system, literally anyone can dub. It's that easy. And if you don't believe me, you can ask them for a live demonstration. I'm sure they'd love to show you. I just wanted to get that out of the way. First of all, up front, easiest dubbing platform for actors that I've ever worked with. Today, however, I've been asked to speak with you about a recent cloud dubbing project that I also cast and co-directed with my directing partner Juan Sola at Zoo Digital during the height of the COVID-19 outbreak. The film is titled The Whistlers, and it's a Romanian film that premiered at the 2019 Cannes Film Festival and is being distributed by Magnolia Pictures. So due to the pandemic, this project had to be dubbed into English 100% remotely. And using Zoo's cloud dubbing system, we were able to cast established actors from Los Angeles, Chicago, and Atlanta. We recorded, directed, engineered, and QC'd the entire film within about 2 weeks. And for those of you who are not familiar with dubbing, that kind of efficiency using remote setups simply did not exist before Zoo's platform, as Raúl was saying. There are now a number of remote audio recording options available to studios, but in my experience as an actor, most of them require the actors to pay large upfront fees for the programs, which to me is asinine. Unlike Zoo, where all my talent needed was a mic, a quiet place, and a computer. The process, it was seamless from start to finish. And it really allowed my talent and everyone involved to continue working at the highest industry standards from the comfort and safety of our homes. Another huge upside, I think, to the cloud dubbing platform is the way it streamlines the process. I've worked on other Magnolia projects before where we used the standard studio system, and that system requires a lot of people, as Raúl was saying. Just to give you a little bit more in-depth idea of how it used to work, the production company would contact the studio and request a dub of their project. The project was then assigned a project coordinator. The project coordinator would then hire translators, the adapters, the studios, the audio engineers, the directors, the casting directors, and the post team. The casting director would then use usually a small group of their favorite actors, not necessarily the best voices for the job, and try to coordinate times for them to come into the studio and record. Now, during the session, you're actually paying for the actor, the director, the engineer, the studio, and the coordinator. And once the session was over, it would go to QC, or quality control. And then if there were any errors, you'd have to bring the talent back and start the whole process over. It could be cumbersome, to say the least, but Zoo is different. Zoo has the entire team in-house, as Stuart was saying, and Gordon, and they're able to work remotely from anywhere in the world. So when we got the call for the Whistlers, it went something like this. They contacted Zoo to do the dub. Zoo used their in-house coordinators, translators, and QC team, and they hired me to cast and direct the project. I was then able to cast it based on a huge catalog of talent that were already onboarded in their online system. I was able to direct, engineer, and QC the project completely remotely in a fraction of the time and eliminate the bulk of the traditional system. For me, another benefit of the system is that we were able to actually use 2 directors simultaneously. So while I was directing a talent in Atlanta from Los Angeles, Juan was directing an actress in Chicago from Los Angeles. So as you can see where I'm going with this, it's a huge benefit in terms of turnaround time and scheduling. If one actor isn't able to meet a date or a time with one director, since we had 2 directors, we were really able to schedule in slots. And sort of the last thing that I wanted to touch on is using this system, I think, is just as, if not more, intimate in terms of being able to pull off really nuanced performances from the actors. And that's the fun part for me. In traditional systems, there's just a lot more pressure on everyone, driving in traffic, multiple people in the booth, etc. With the cloud directing, it's just the actor and the director, one-on-one. And that makes for a really collaborative feel, which is where I think you can really get some magic. And really, that's what the whole thing is about, right? Translating that original piece into another language while not losing the magic and even improving upon it, if we can. Simply put, in my humble opinion, Zoo is light years ahead of traditional dubbing studios, both in technology and foresight. And I'm proud to be a small part of their continued success and growth. So that's it for me, Stuart. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Matt. That was really helpful. So we're moving straight on now, and our next speaker, we're very pleased to have Giselle Miggiani. Giselle has worked as an audiovisual translator and dubbing dialogue writer for Italian TV since 2006. She's a lecturer in audiovisual translation at the University of Malta, and she also provides consultancy and training on dubbing and localization. She's the author of the book Dialogue Writing for Dubbing, An Insider's Perspective, which was published in 2019. Over to you, Giselle.
Hi, thank you, Stuart, and thank you for the invitation. Hello, everyone. So I'm Giselle, as Stuart said, and I'm based in Malta. And I will be speaking about script adaptation, and I want to share my perspective, both as a dubbing translator and adapter, and as a trainer in dubbing translation. And I will start with the training. Next slide, please. Okay, so now, before discovering ZOOdubs, I would teach dubbing translation the traditional way. The students would translate and adapt film segments for dubbing purposes, and then I would ask them to voice the dubbing scripts in class to try them out, therefore emulating what the dubbing actors would do in the recording studios. And this is how I could give them feedback as to whether the script adaptation could work or not. Next slide, please. Now, so this is the classroom at the University of Malta, and last semester, ZOOdubs was already my plans. It was part of the course program, and I intended at some point to introduce cloud dubbing and to teach ZOOdubs to my students. And then, unexpectedly, we were forced to switch to remote teaching. And therefore, what happened was that instead of teaching ZOOdubs to my students, I ended up using ZOOdubs to teach my students dubbing adaptation in general. Next. So this is the ZOOdubs virtual classroom, and this is how I discovered ZOOdubs as a very effective training tool for dubbing, and I will be explaining why. Next slide, please. So we need to bear in mind that film is a complex work of art, a complex whole, with its filming codes that are all interdependent. The lighting, photography, the images, the music. Now, what happens in dubbing is that we extract the original dialogue and we replace it with a newly recorded dialogue in a new language. And this must fit back in nicely. This, so to speak, cut and paste process needs to go totally unnoticed by the viewers. The viewers need to believe that the actors on screen are reciting in the dubbed language. So the magic that Matt was referring to a while ago. Next, please. Therefore, an important keyword in dubbing is credibility. A dubbed product works if it is credible to its viewers. And the extent to which we achieve this credibility depends on the quality of the dubbed product. Now, quality depends on a number of factors: the choice of voices, the actor's performance, the direction, the sound mix and editing. But it also depends on the quality of the dubbing script. Next slide, please. Now, so far I've been using both the words translation and adaptation. Matt mentioned as well the translators, adapters, because translation for dubbing in actual fact goes way beyond translation. It's not like the translation of a book or a legal document. Dubbing adapters need to rewrite, readjust, readapt the dialogue several times until they manage to suit the text, the new dubbed text, to the local culture, to the new language, to any restrictions existing in the dubbing territory, legal and commercial restrictions, censorship restrictions. And last but not least, the text needs to be synchronized to the visuals. And this is where ZOOdubs is of enormous help to the dubbing adapter. Next slide, please. So I mentioned the synchronization to the visuals. So synchronization, matching the dialogue to the visuals, implies taking into account timing, tempo, body language, and lip movements. These are the 4 pillars in script adaptation as far as synchronization is concerned. Next, please. Now, this is an excerpt, it's a sample of a traditional dubbing script. It's drawn on my own professional practice because this is the way I used to work. So in the traditional method, dubbing translators and adapters write their adapted dialogue very often in a simple Word file, which they then send, together with character names and other notations that could help the dubbing actors then in the studios. Next. On the other hand, this is what part of the ZOOdubs script adaptation interface looks like. And ZOOdubs integrates what is referred to as the Rhythmoband method. It was mentioned in the video. And this is what allows the dialogue to scroll beneath the video as it is played in karaoke style, as Matt mentioned. So this way, the dubbing actors know when to recite the text, but also the dubbing translators know when to voice their script and at which speed in order to try out their own adaptation. Because words are stretched and compressed according to the speech tempo. When the dubbed line underneath the original line is more or less compressed or stretched to the same extent, we know that it is synchronized. We can tell from the graphical rendition whether the lines are most likely to match in duration and rhythm. Now, this is of great help, not only to the dubbing translators and adapters during the script adaptation process, but it also helps me as a trainer to evaluate the work of novice translators, of my trainees. Next slide, please. And ZOOdubs also integrates other visual aids. These faint vertical lines that ZOOdubs refers to as markers that warn the dubbing adapter when specific lip articulatory movements need to be matched. Like in this specific example, the M in me. Next slide, please. But what is important to highlight is that if we had to compare the multiple tasks carried out by dubbing translators in the traditional process to the ZOOdubs process, we realize that many of these tasks are either already catered for by ZOOdubs or are now not necessary in the first place, allowing dubbing translators and adapters to focus on fewer tasks, such as matching the body language, for instance. Next slide. Now, when it comes to the workflow, the dubbing adaptation, the script adaptation workflow as a whole, the traditional workflow implies the exchange of several deliverables back and forth, while in ZOOdubs, the dubbing adapters simply access the platform, automatically having access to all the video material, the scripts, the glossaries, and so on. And dubbing translators and adapters do not even need to save the drafts that they are preparing because it is done automatically. So they are able to truly focus on the translation and adaptation. Now, we know that focusing on fewer tasks implies enhancing quality. Next, please. So when using ZOOdubs to train novice translators, I have encountered better quality, especially when it comes to accuracy in synchronization. The dubbing translators can focus more on language and they develop a sense of dialogue rhythm way faster. The training process is also faster and evaluating the work of trainees is way easier. So overall, ZOOdubs makes the dubbing adaptation process and training process more time effective. Next, please. Okay, so time effectiveness. This is key in such a fast-paced industry, which is becoming ever more fast-paced because of the increase in OTT platforms that need to make content available in multiple languages across multiple countries, and ideally, as Esther mentioned, ideally simultaneously. So this also calls for the training of new translators in order to have more readily available resources at one go. We also have new dubbing languages emerging, such as English language dubbing, which Matt just mentioned. And English language dubbing is a market which is slowly starting to boom. The reason being a 2018 EU directive, which now obliges streaming platforms such as Netflix or Amazon to purchase and produce more European content. 30% of their content, despite being American distributors, cannot derive from the US. This means more content, yes, in British English, but also in Spanish, in Turkish, in French, in Swedish, in German, in Italian, and so on. And all these need to be dubbed into English. So, in conclusion, from my perspective, we need more time-effective tools that facilitate and accelerate the dubbing process while ensuring quality, and more training and specialized human resources in the field. And from my experience with ZOOdubs so far, I can say that ZOOdubs is effectively addressing these current and near future demands. And that's it from me. Thank you for listening.
And thank you so much, Giselle, for sharing your experiences with us. Our next speaker is our CFO, Phil Blundell. Phil has held senior finance and operational roles within UK tech companies, including Digital, Eagle Eye, and Intelligent Environments. Phil.
Thank you, Stuart. Wow, how do I follow that? But I'll try. So you've had some excellent presentations so far, guys, about our strategy and our competitive advantage. What I'd like to do is take just a few minutes to explain how we will translate our unique proposition into financial success. Thank you. Right. So, but it might be worth us, first of all, recapping where we've got to today. So what I'm showing here is FY17 through to FY20. And what it's quite clear in 17 is that we were predominantly, from a revenue point of view, a legacy DVD service provider. We had some software licenses for marketing software, and we had a fledgling subtitling business. What has happened over the following 3 years is we've seen a marked drop-off in our DVD revenues. We've also seen a steady decline in our licenses. And this has been replaced, first of all, by a near doubling of our subtitling business. We've entered the streaming service for digital packaging. And we also launched our cloud dubbing platform, which has gone from 0 to nearly 6 million as of today. And it is worth mentioning, actually, if you were just to eliminate the legacy numbers from this slide, we've gone from effectively 8 million to 28 million in 3 years, which is a compound annual growth rate of over 50%. Next slide, please. So how are we going to get to 100 million of sales in the medium term? So this is really going to start from us building on the reputation we already have in the US market. This is a market that we think for us is addressable, is around $800 million today and is growing at about 10%. So we've worked in the industry for 20 years. We've built a solid reputation for performance and for excellence. This has been evidenced in the last 12 months when we announced that we were being chosen as an end-to-end vendor for one of the new OTT services. We have some revenue from that client so far, but we're nowhere near its full potential. That OTT service is part of a much bigger group, and we are already starting to cross-sell, and we see huge potential to grow our revenues within just that client. In addition, we have small contracts with most of the major Hollywood studios, and our real aim over the next few years is to become a primary vendor for all those Hollywood studios. And finally, our sales strategy revolves around working with the global streaming services, the Amazons, the Netflixes, etc. of this world. And again, we have some contracts with these guys, but they tend to be quite small. We want to become one of their primary vendors over the coming period. So really, in summary, sorry, can we go back? Sorry, I'll tell you when we're ready to go, Johnny, sorry. So really, in summary, the sales strategy is based on excellent account management. We don't actually have to move and win any new clients to achieve our first 100 million of sales. Next slide, please. So how does this look from a service point of view? So I built a slide here just showing that bridge. So there we are on the left-hand side with our current revenues, just under 30 million. We see in the short term additional revenues from the new end-to-end vendor contract. We also see significant upside from that client as we sell across their other divisions. And then finally, just to get to that first 100 million, because we obviously would hope to go on to higher numbers in the future, is that selling into those Hollywood studios and those streaming services, we need to grow our subtitling business by about 60% and grow our dubbing to about another 25 million on top of what we will achieve within the first OTT client. So what that shows you is a business that in terms of its sales shape, roughly about 15 million of digital packaging, our subtitling doubling to about 30 million, and our dubbing business going from 5 today to about 55 million. But it is worth noting that is 70% of the overall market. So as you've seen from the presentations today, we have an excellent opportunity with our cloud-based dubbing solution. And what does that mean in terms of the addressable market? So currently we believe we have about 4% of the market. To achieve that first 100 million, we need to get to about 10% of that Hollywood budget. And we believe that we will not take more than 30% off one studio. So you can see actually it's not that ambitious a target in the medium term, and certainly something that we feel is eminently achievable. Next slide, please. And then just to finish from me really is just to sort of recap on our strategy, our winning strategy as we see it. So it's been very clear from the presentations today that certainly with the COVID pandemic, that our technology first approach is a winning one. It means that we are able to provide continuity during this difficult time. We're still providing the same quality of the service, but more importantly, we're actually competing and winning business from our competitors. Our whole strategy is built around scalability. And again, during the last 6 months, we've been able to prove that we can act quicker, we can deliver faster, and we can be more reliable than our competitors. For those who aren't yet invested in our company, I think it's clear that it's still very much a growth market. The big OTT providers see significant growth for their business in new geographies, and we have the platform to be able to support that and give them that media localization. And then finally, actually, we have a unique culture. You know, we've got 20 years of being a software company and innovating. We've got 20 years of experience in Hollywood and building those relationships and building that reputation. And that really gives us that foundation for the future growth that we anticipate in our business. So there's a short presentation on our future growth. I'd like to hand back to Stuart, and thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Phil. So we'll now turn to our final speaker, Chris Oakley, who joined Zoo in 2004 and has held various positions in our R&D team. His current role is Vice President of Software Engineering. He oversees all our product development and a team of over 30 software professionals. Over to you, Chris.
Thank you very much, Stuart. Hello, everyone. As Stuart said, I head up the R&D part of our company. I'd just like to take you through what we feel differentiates us in the localization industry from a technology point of view. So Zoo is a technology company at its core. As Phil said, we have 20 years experience in developing software for the entertainment industry, and our technology powers all of our production services. We're uniquely positioned in that we have direct access to production workflows. We have access to voice artists and dubbing directors, and this allows us to develop products that just work for people in our industry. We take the experience we gain in the field and we adapt our tech to meet the needs of our clients. And it also means that we can see changes as they happen and react accordingly to what's happening in the market. An example is obviously, the COVID-19 pandemic, where we were able to quickly make changes to studio workflows to keep them working. We have a track record of building innovative products, which is proven by the industry awards that we've received. Our award-winning dubbing platform, we feel, is years ahead of any competition, and we've been constantly improving and refining ZOOdubs over the last 4 years to become a platform that can compete with studio recordings. We take a pragmatic approach to solving problems. We work closely with our colleagues who are industry experts to design something that is going to work for them. Using their experience and knowledge, we are constantly refining our products. This is the benefit of having some very experienced people, as you've seen, available to us, and be able to access their knowledge. Through this approach, we've developed some major innovations in the industry, and I'd like to take you through a few of those innovations that we've introduced over the last year. So Delta is it gives us the ability to manage changes quickly and efficiently and introduce major time and cost savings to the localization process. New cuts of films are delivered throughout the process, and this can have a huge impact to vendors. Traditionally, someone would have to watch the video to figure out what had changed, and this is obviously time-consuming and error-prone. Delta automatically identifies changes to the cuts. It retimes and syncs the dialogue and passes that information to all of our products. And this is obviously a massive reduction of impact of the change to vendors, and saves them time and cost. Security is a primary goal of ours and our customers. We've developed our own secure video streaming platform with personalized watermarks. This allows for a one-time upload of the video to the cloud. File is then encrypted and then only accessible by our trusted users of our software. Video is then streamed with real-time watermarking of the user's information embedded within. And this is one of the main reasons why the biggest studios are happy to trust us with their valuable content. Quality of our recordings has to be right up there with the best of the dubbing studios. To achieve this, we have developed a way to test the dubbing environment every time a recording happens. To do this, we perform an initial test. It allows the person to become an approved dubbing director or voice artist. And we test the limitations of the computer being used, quality of the microphone, the environment for reverb and background noise, and then we also gather geolocation information as well. And then we lock these test results to that user. And if a voice artist passes all these tests, then they're approved to be able to record. Then they're tested each and every time that they start a new recording session. And all this comes together to ensure that they have the best possible environment and that we produce recordings that match the quality of studios. Collaborative recording sessions are the ability to capture all aspects of a dubbing session for a future action replay of the session. We capture all the video and audio for up to 50 participants in a single session, plus all the direction given by the director. And this can then be sent to studio executives to view everything that's happened in that session. They can zoom into a particular voice artist and see a facial expression, or they can see a group of people and see how they react to funny or scary parts of the film. This functionality was initially introduced for studio executives to watch back, but there are many other applications for this tech, such as animation or computer games where they want to model the face of the voice artist, or screening new shows or films to gauge viewers' reactions. So that's some of the innovations that we've introduced recently, but we're also working on our next innovations, and we feel there's some very exciting prospects in the areas of machine learning. So we've identified opportunities for machine learning to help with the localization of video content. And we're collaborating with experts in machine learning, universities and PhD students on a targeted approach to machine learning and dialogue localization. A few examples are the areas of automatic identification of multi-word expressions and idioms, machine translation using contextual adaptation, analysis of recorded audio, and automated voice conversion. So let's have a look at these in a little bit more detail. So machine translation has never worked very well, and we've all seen bad examples of translated text. And we feel that the mainstream machine learning community are focused on the literal translation of text, but that doesn't really solve the problem with dialogue, which is obviously very different. You know, dialogue is very complicated and made up of multi-word expressions, idiomatic phrases, slang, dialogue, and they all can have different meaning in different contexts. And there's a couple of examples here of idioms in German and Portuguese when translated back to English. We're working on research projects to look at ways we can automatically identify idioms and multi-word expressions to improve machine translation to work with dialogue. We're conducting analysis of how second language speakers learn how to identify idioms and replicate that process computationally. And we're using our vast database of voice artists and translators. We have access to thousands of second language speakers, and we could call upon them to help with this research as well. With traditional studios, a huge cost is not only the studio itself, but also the experienced dubbing director and sound engineer for every recording. ZOOdubs already provides feedback to voice artists on their recordings, but we're looking at how we can take this to the next level with machine learning. We have thousands of high quality recordings, but we also have thousands of recordings that are not so good, where typically a voice actor has come in late or has missed some words, or has really just totally messed up the recording. And we're using this corpus of recordings to identify what a good recording looks like and also what a bad recording looks like. And this will allow voice artists to diagnose problems with their recordings and rectify them without a need of an expert to be on hand. And this improves the productivity of the voice talent, reduces the need for them to come back at a later date to re-record lines, which were problematic. Automatic voice conversion is also a very exciting area of research for us. It can sometimes be problematic in the industry to source the right voices. This could be, for instance, children. There's lots of legal loopholes that we have to jump through to get access. Or particular voice talent that voiced a character in season 1 but is now busy when recording season 2. And we want to streamline this process, and we think that technology can help with this. We're looking at a way in which a voice actor can provide a training set of phrases. Once the system understands the voice, it's then possible to synthesize this voice using another actor. And as you can imagine, this would reduce any bottlenecks in the workflow and allow work to continue. So I think the main points I'd like to leave you with are that as developers of the technology that sets Zoo apart, we're constantly learning, and we're uniquely positioned in that we have experts in localization right on our doorstep. We're always looking for that next innovation to change the industry with technology, and we'll always continue to surround ourselves with the best minds from industry experts and academia to really push the boundaries. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much, Chris. That was very helpful. So that concludes all our speakers. I'd now just like to take just a couple of minutes just to kind of draw these threads together and summarize what we've covered. Just the next slide, please. So, so the key things I hope you've picked up and will take away with you. First of all, that media localization is a significant and high-value segment which is growing rapidly, and the global expansion of these over-the-top OTT services are driving demand for end-to-end services that Zoo delivers. One of very few companies in a position to offer the full range of services to these large media organizations. We've created cloud technology which provides us with our own end-to-end solution for undertaking all of this project work, and in particular, a future-proof solution for dubbing. And that has been really put to the test in this period of lockdown, when it was used to produce dubs for a number of major media companies. And of course, one of the things that COVID-19 has done is expose shortcomings of traditional dubbing practices and the established practice of having physical dubbing studios in territory. As a result, we anticipate significant first half growth year on year in our dubbing sales, largely because we were able to continue to undertake dubbing projects, and indeed secured more dubbing projects when other players in the industry were not able to operate. And growth in dubbing for Zoo, we should expect that to drive growth across our other service lines, because we see, as we've covered in this presentation, a shift to the convenience on the part of buyers for end-to-end services, and therefore our ability to offer dubbing across all languages enhances our complete proposition. And in fact, in the first quarter of our current fiscal year, the value of the projects that we were working on during that period was more than 3 times that in the prior year. So hopefully this session has been helpful to you. We have got time for Q&A. We're right on schedule. So the first question we're going to look at is a finance question. So I'm going to ask Phil to join the stage. And just a reminder, if you missed the beginning of this session, to the right side of your screen, you should see a questions tab. If you go in there, you can type in a question, and we'll try and get through as many of those questions in the time that's available to us. So a question for Phil comes from John Gladwin, and it's, can you please clarify the percentage mix between dubbing and subtitling in localization revenue in FY20, and what kind of growth dubbing has experienced in dollar terms in the last 2 years?
Okay, so the mix is 70-30, so 70% subtitling and 30% dubbing. I think in the last 2 years, it's fair to say that the dubbing proposition has hardly grown at all in dollar terms, from about 5 to 6 million is the absolute numbers, and that has been well documented by Stuart in our last set of results. So although we had an initial big jump from 0 upwards, the last couple of years we've been bedding in the solution, and we've been going after these end-to-end vendor contracts where dubbing is one of the elements within it, and you'll start to see that growth coming through in future years.
Great, thank you, Phil. The next question is probably best handled by Gordon. Gordon, if you're still around, if you could just come on stage. This question comes from Stephen Wood, and the question is, Gordon, have you seen your dubbing pipeline balloon post-lockdown? How is dubbing priced? What KPIs will help us to understand how growth in dubbing volumes will flow through to the profits of the group?
So yeah, we definitely have seen an uptick in the amount of dubbing we're doing. However, as we said, the most dubbing is done in new content that's flown through the pipeline, and that's kind of stuttered, as we've said, with the lockdown. Production stopped, so we expect new productions to start appear Q1, calendar Q1 next year, and those should kick back in. What we are doing a lot of at the moment is helping our customers prepare their catalog content to go up onto their platforms. Now, one of the things we do there is they'll have a localization strategy for different pieces of content. So whether it's a feature or some episodic, and based on that localization strategy, they'll ask us to go figure out, what do we have basically? You know, what subtitles do we have? Do those subtitles go with that piece of video? What dubs do we have? Do they go with this piece of video? Is the quality appropriate? Once we do that, we'll usually report back to them and say, okay, this is what you've got. We can conform all these together, make them work and deliver them onto the platform, or we can say these other things are missing. You know, you don't have subs in this language, or you still have to, you know, dub in other languages. At that point, based on the localization strategy and the budget they've got, they'll make a decision quite often if they'll make them at that point. Obviously, dubs are much more expensive than subs, so there may be budget constraints and they may subtitle it. So we don't see a lot of new content coming through at the moment, which would be dubbed more broadly. But what we are working on is a lot of that back catalogue, figuring out what they've got, conforming it, deliver it to the platform for them. And again, that's all part of our end-to-end strategies, that we can perform all those tasks. We can do all of that work, and then if they need something new made, we can do that as well. So we're doing a lot of that at the moment, and that's feeding, you know, the dubbing pipeline as well. In terms of the pricing for dubs, well, subtitles are priced by the runtime minute of the content. So if you get 50 minutes worth of content, you have a dollar amount times 50 minutes. Dubs are priced very similarly. There's a few levers in there. One is if it's a lip sync dub, which most people have been talking about today, where you're matching the actors' lip movements against the foreign language that you're recording, which is much more time consuming. So that'll generally be a much higher price point. And then you have another one called VO, voiceover dub, which you'll see mostly on, you know, documentary style material, or I've just forgot the name of it. I was going to say soap opera, but not that. Anyway, like a cooking program or something like that. Reality. That's the one I was looking for. Reality. I need another coffee. It's still early. That stuff will actually be at a lower price point, you know, because you're not trying to lip sync. You just drop the original audio and record over that. So again, all priced at a per minute run rate, and the lip sync being much higher. And the other lever is, should they want star talent? So if they want a known actor to be involved in it, at that point, we normally have to negotiate the fees for the star talent and build all of that stuff in as well. In terms of the questions around the KPIs that we would surface up, I would leave that to Stuart or Phil to answer, to be honest. That's above my pay grade.
Whilst you're up, Gordon, there are just a couple others I think that you're best placed to answer. First one from David Reeves. How can you transform or disrupt or improve dubbing in video games?
Yeah, so that's actually a really interesting one, and we've been eyeing up the video game space for a little while. And in fact, you know, during COVID, when we knew that they were on lockdown as well, we took the opportunity to connect with a few of the games companies to really understand what challenges they might be facing. Because again, at that point, people were kind of desperately looking for solutions to, you know, having the studios locked down. So it's been really interesting. We've actually engaged with a few of them, and we're in dialogue and really understanding the challenges. And they approach things slightly differently. Obviously, for the kind of content we normally work on, entertainment content, it's timed. You know, there is a duration of a feature or an episode, and we're recording very precisely against that when we then dub into different languages. So our systems are built around it. Our system expects a piece of video with really tight timings. And then we'll get, you know, foreign language dialogue that we're then going to dub, and we lay it into that timing. Video is a bit different if they record what they call wild recording. So they'll actually just record a whole bunch of dialogue and then use that dialogue and start dropping into the games. And they all approach that slightly differently in terms of how they go about that. So I think what we've discovered is that our system needs tweaked. to be able to apply it to the games industry, but it's actually just a tweak. It's not that different from what from the way that they do it today. So we are definitely exploring that, definitely engaging with a few companies, in dialogue with them. We have started to factor in some changes to ZOOdubs to support that. And our plan is to really go after those guys and see if we can have an impact there.
Thanks, Gordon. And one more whilst you're up there. This one comes from Safraz Sahani. What is the high-level timeline for Zoo to join as a preferred vendor for the next 3 to 5 large clients?
Yeah, so if I knew that, that would be great. It's really down to these clients. A lot of it's driven by RFPs, so they'll run these big requests for proposals, and from that, a whole bunch of vendors will put forward the proposals. Off the back of that, the studios will start to decide who they want to work with and who they want to engage with. And our most recent big win, a very large studio, all came about from an RFP. That RFP actually happened about 18 months ago. Is when we went through the whole process and they made decisions and then started to roll that out. One of the goals I always used to say is get invited to the party first. And for a lot of people, when we were moving into this space, we weren't really a known entity and wouldn't always get an invite to the party. We now get invites to the party. And at that point, we're able to put forward our presentation and, who we are and what we do. And we have some really unique positioning around the platforms we build, the way that we operate. And like I said before, I think there was some technical challenges there for people to understand from a dubbing point of view how we operate. But I think COVID's really allowed us to break through that. So what it'll come down to now is over the next few years is they'll go through those normal RFPs. We'll participate in it. Hopefully we'll do a good job at being selected as one of their main vendors, and then we will build off the back of that. As the guys mentioned before, we do work with all the studios to a more or lesser extent with all of them. And it's really just opening that door to make sure that we can get more of that volume. So that's our goal, and again, it will be driven a lot by our customers' timeline rather than ours. We'd like it to be much quicker, but we do get invited to all the parties now and at least get our chance to say our piece, put forward our pricing and a proposal.
Great, thanks, Gordon. I'll give you a break now. There are a few technology questions, so if Chris, if you're around and could join, we'll take those. So the first, Chris, comes from Nick Yates, who asks, how close are you to be able and confident to introduce your machine learning tools to your commercial work?
Well, obviously a big part of machine learning is building a data set that you can teach the computer to learn from, basically. So we're actually already in the process of gathering that data. So we're quite, we're further along in certain areas than we are others, but we're quite confident that we can introduce this into our systems pretty soon. To start providing kind of additional tools for dubbing directors to be able to use, and the goal is not to kind of replace people and not to replace voice artists or dubbing directors, but to actually just provide them with tool sets that will improve the quality that they produce, the speed that they can do things. So we are pretty confident that it will provide pretty good value for us going forward.
Great, thank you. I've got a couple more, Chris. The next one is, do the OTT companies have a single standard for data management?
I think what you're asking there is kind of around how we deliver data back to the OTT platforms, and
I think so, yes.
I think in terms of audio and dub data that we're sending back, then they are pretty kind of standard and all use pretty standard formats that will go back. In regards to areas like subtitles, that is actually one of the benefits that we have with our system is that we do support multiple different outputs, and the industry is quite fragmented in that area in that it has kind of many different formats that they've used over different years, and different studios hold on to the particular formats that they like to use. So by having our technology either record or capture those that data once and then be able to output it in multiple formats. I think that kind of gives us the edge there to be able to support as many studios, OTT platforms, or whatever it is that we're kind of sending that data to.
Okay, thanks. And one further question from Bob Lau that hopefully you could cover. It's competitors have added remote dubbing to their portfolios. What deficiencies do they need to address to catch up on Zoo's platform?
There's been, as I mentioned in the presentation, we've been developing ZOOdubs for 4 years, and we've constantly been optimizing it. And there's a whole load of problems and challenges that we've had to get over in that time frame. And I think the industry is just hitting those now and having to tackle those same problems that we had to very early on in the life cycle of ZOOdubs. So I think the kind of main issues that they will have are is really just kind of scalability of the product and the quality of it. We've been working on quality for a long time, so I think that puts us quite far ahead of any competitors who will look to do a similar kind of system to us.
Great, thanks so much, Chris. I'll give you a break. We've got a question to do with our strategy for talent management, and Raúl, if you're still around, if you wouldn't mind joining us, you can hopefully help field those questions. So the question also from Bob is, the Latin American approach of first building a quality network of talent seems to work well. Do you plan to apply this approach to other languages?
Yes, we are applying it to other territories, and that will be the global approach to escalate ZOOdubs. We have done it in Spain. We have a lot of talents working directly with us with no student intervention. Germany, France, Italy, and we're trying to do it in the rest of the world. We have a lot of talents in Korea and in Japan. So yeah, that's the idea, to continue applying the same strategy.
Great, thank you. And another question here that I think you can probably help with. The question comes from Gareth Evans. It sounds like new content is more dubbing intensive, whereas back catalogue localization seems to generate more subtitling. Could you confirm whether that's a fair assumption? And if so, why is it the case?
Yes, it is. I lately have said several times that dubbing is the new fashion, and this is because of the increasing business of streaming services. There is a lot of necessity of new content, and also in order to feed this streaming services and new platforms, they needed to get access to old libraries, and those old libraries probably the content was never dubbed, or the quality of the dubbing is really bad because it was dubbed several years ago in an analog technology, and the masters could be damaged. So that catalog needs to be redubbed. So yeah, dubbing is blooming because content is blooming.
Okay, thank you very much, Raúl. Right, the next question is for Esther. I'm not sure if Esther is still around. If you are, do you want to step forward and I'll throw this question at you? Great, you are. Hello. Fantastic.
I'm here.
Hi, Esther. Yeah, the question is, comes from Gareth Evans. Do you think that remote dubbing growth will be initially by smaller customers who may be more innovative, or is it likely to be larger organizations forced into remote dubbing by COVID-19 who choose to stick with it for a proportion of their new content? Any views on that?
Yeah, interesting question. No, not necessarily just the smaller customers. I mean, I think even if we look at Zoo's customer base before the COVID factor, I mean, you had a customer base among some of these larger customers, although obviously COVID-19 being a driving factor there. Probably pre-COVID, primarily yes, maybe smaller customers or newer players would be more inclined to shift to remote dubbing. potentially as a means to be able to dub at a lower price point. Another factor, I think, is that many of the very traditional buyers, so Hollywood studios, etc., are, of course, very highly sensitive to quality, and they're also resistant to change. So I think, simply put, wasn't really enough motivation for them to take a leap into remote dubbing all the way prior to that. Maybe they would have trialed it for voiceover or low value content, but not really for sort of lip sync dubbing for feature films and things like that. I would say, just as a final point on this, really, that I think COVID has opened the eyes of the content owners, and the larger ones as well, to the benefits and the possibilities of remote dubbing, and as well as the weaknesses of the traditional supply chain, since it did break down. And really, it is a tight industry. So I think it's very much about kind of achieving that critical mass among OTT and among studios.
Great, thank you, Esther. And one final question for you, and I think for the session, since we're just out of time now. Question comes from Georgia Connor. What are the learnings from other localization leaders in how to dominate a vertical market?
Yeah, so this is an interesting one. I mean, really, outside from what we've seen, outside of media and probably gaming, there really are not that many large LSPs that would specialize in one vertical. Most of them are multi-vertical. Keywords Studios, I'd say, is probably the best example of vertical-based market leader, and they operate in the video game space. Looking at them, they've grown by organic growth, by acquisition also. They're also publicly listed, lots of acquisitions over the past several years, mostly outside of localization, but they did also recently buy a machine translation provider. So they are pretty diversified in terms of the services that they offer. So it's not just localization. Localization is probably about 30% of their services. But I think looking at that model, it's an understanding of the customer market. It's a deeper penetration within the workflows, strategic acquisition as well. Also capturing the tech, capturing or captivating the kind of technology trend as well that's happening.
Great, thank you very much, Esther. And I think we'll draw the session to a close now, since our time is up. So I'd just like to wrap up by thanking everyone for attending and taking the time, particularly to our speakers, and of those, especially our guest speakers who very generously gave their time to be with us today, Esther, Matt, and Giselle. Also to my colleagues on the West Coast of the US who got up a little bit early this morning and had their breakfast and a strong cup of coffee earlier than usual. So thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I hope this was helpful, and we'll see you again sometime. Thank you.